Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another Sunday of When Black Women Gather. My name is Helen Higginbotham, and I am the founder of this organization where Black women come together to talk about real life situations that are affecting us. Sometimes we just come together to laugh and chat, but today is a very serious subject. We're going to be talking about domestic violence. Lately, I've been including men on our calls because so much is happening in our community. It requires that we're moving as a unit, but I wanted us to have a place for just women to talk about domestic violence, what our experiences, what our impressions, what questions we might have, and just to talk openly about it. So today we're going to talk about. You'll see my screen. Um, my screen. What do you call these? A background screen. It's featuring four Black women who are very pronounced in the news right now. Each of them has been murdered by and by a Black man. And I think that's another part of the conversation that we're not dealing with because people are not wanting to say, that it was, we don't want to make it into a Black man versus a Black woman situation because it's just a horrible situation no matter what it is. Just so happens that these cases are mostly murder suicides, and they are all over the news. So real quickly, I'll run through them with you. I think we've all heard about Dr. Cerina Fairfax. She is the dentist who was murdered by her husband in not Fair, yeah, Annandale, so Fairfax County, Virginia. Her husband, if you may remember, Justin Fairfax ran for, no, he was a lieutenant governor of Virginia. And when it was time for him to be considered for governor, there women started coming forward saying that he had thank you. Diane is correcting me to say intimate partner violence. That's what people are saying now instead of domestic violence. Um, but anyway, when it was time for him to run for governor, the first was a young lady he went to college with who came forward and said I think she said he had raped her when they were in college. So that derailed his career, and it sounds like it just went downhill from there. And then I'm sure we've all heard about the social media influencer, young Black girl dating a white guy. They were um, in Zanzibar. He proposes to her, and she's dead. Um, you know, she had ligament marks around her neck, but he's trying to, I guess, tell the Zanzibar police that she committed suicide, but they're not buying it. And last I heard is they've confiscated his passport. So I'll share some links in the chat for you with these cases. I think we've all heard about the vice mayor down in Broward County, Nancy Metayer. Am I saying that correct, Narlene? Because she's a Haitian lady, Metayer, Metayer, Bowen.
Uh, yes, it's fine. It would be Metayer, but it's fine. It's yeah,
Okay.
Metayer.
Yeah, so she was a rising star in the Democratic Party. These two were high school sweethearts. Who knows what happened? It seems as though nobody knew that they were having these problems, or maybe people just weren't talking about them, which is a lot of what happens. And I'm sure Tanisha will talk to us about that today, how we don't talk about what's happening in our homes. And the thing that we need to recognize here, you just don't know what's going on in your neighbor's house. But he kills her. He kills her, chops her body up, tells his uncle or somebody that he did it, and wants the uncle to help him cover it up. And the uncle called the cops immediately. But this woman was a rising star, and everybody was looking for her to do big things in the Democratic Party. So, what a loss to our community. And motive, who knows? I don't know the motive. Was it jealousy? He was not nearly as successful as her. But who knows? And then the last one that I'm going to talk about today, that I'm going to point out today, because we all know some other cases or some situations of our own. I don't know if you guys have heard about in Chicago, Barbara Deere is her name, and her 23-year-old son, shot her several times and then shot himself. So we got a problem, y'all. We got a problem that's going on here. And we need to talk about. We know that when Black women turn up missing or dead, and even our children, like we just don't get the national attention that we should get. But these cases are getting a lot of attention, and I think that's a good thing. If nothing more, we're talking about it, right? And I will share with you, I love the parents of the young lady who got murdered in Zanzibar because they didn't wait for the press. They went to the press. And luckily, they had a Black female reporter who covered the story for her. And that put it on the on the national radar because if they let this guy go, trust me, wild horses would not have gotten him back to Zanzibar to face the investigation. So I'm going to read you a poem and then I'm going to introduce you to our guest. And then we'll just go ahead and turn it over to her and we'll talk domestic, I'm sorry, intimate partner violence. We'll talk about it today. One of the ladies that has been a member of When Black Women Gather for a long time, and as soon as she found us, she wrote me a beautiful poem and even included it in one of her published works. And she's just fantastic. And her name is Carolyn June Jackson. If you're on Facebook, look for her work, and she has published books. But she drops these poems like anything. So she wrote this yesterday, and she had in mind the dentist, Dr. Fairfax. Um, and it's called What Was Left Unsaid. The walls knew first. They held the echoes of slammed doors and suppressed cries, a series of apologies stitched together with trembling hands of fear and hesitation. Love used to live here. You can observe it in the photos, smiles embedded in the frames, a life lived for the sake of others, a truth kept hidden to ensure survival. He said he was sorry more times than the bruises could be counted. She learned to shrink herself into quieter corners, confusing silence with safety. Neighbors heard a noise, a thud, a plea, a break, yet still insufficient to knock, not enough to stay awake at night. Time kept moving, like nothing was wrong until it stopped. Sirens cut open the midnight hour, red and blue washing over what was once a safe haven. um, Tape is stretched across the doorway like a sentence nobody wanted to read. Two bodies, one story too late. The children were eyewitnesses. They witnessed everything. They heard every word. They were there at the time of the killing, and now they will live with the loss and trauma. No victory here, no justice in the stillness, just a house full of angry ghosts and questions that won't rest. What if someone had asked? What if someone had stayed? What if love had not been confused with narcissistic control? The walls are quiet now, but if you listen closely, they are still telling us to hear the danger before it becomes the ending. Carolyn June Jackson. She's a poet, author, and a storyteller, and she wrote that yesterday on the heels of the news. What I left out is the lieutenant governor, when he kills his wife and himself, his teenage kids are in the house. So, and I think it's the son who finds the mother and calls the police. So now we have two children without any parents. So today we're going to talk about, for these four women and other women, say her name out loud, a conversation on intimate partner violence. And our guest speaker is on screen with me right now. Hi, Tanisha.
Hello, Helen. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for agreeing to come and have this conversation with us. I'm looking for an engaging conversation. I know you're going to share a lot about yourself, your experience. You've got a heck of a background, very impressive.
Yes,
So
thank you.
let me run through a little bit of it, and then I'll turn it over to you, and
Okay.
I'll be in the background helping you however you need me to do. So Tanisha and I met last week at a women's wellness conference that Pam had invited me to. Pam is on here, Pam Bivens. Hi, she's waving. Hi, Pam. Um, and any opportunity that we have as women to get together and talk about ourselves, we need to do it. So it was a really powerful conference. So if there's one happening in your area, please support it. It was put on by, I don't know Joan's last name. What's Joan's last name, Pam?
Dr. Joan Packenham.
Okay, she's the one that sponsored it, and I actually got a good chance to talk with her a lot today. But yeah, just we have to support these things when we do them. But let's talk about Tanisha Bagley. Tanisha is an author, of The Price of Love, One Woman's Journey Through Domestic Violence, is based on a true story and an award-winning keynote speaker. She's an entrepreneur, trauma-informed advocate dedicated to advancing survivor-centered responses to domestic violence, sexual assault, mental health, and suicide prevention. She's born in the Bronx for you New Yorkers who are on the call. She was raised, however, in Palmer Springs, Virginia. I have no idea where that is.
It's about 45 minutes from Richmond, Petersburg,
Okay.
Virginia. Yes, lower
Okay.
side, close to Carolina. Yeah.
So you're close, yeah. She
Yes.
actually lives here, and she lives in Raleigh now.
Yes.
But anyway, so she's lived in those places, and she is a survivor herself. So she's going to share with us her story, which I just heard last week. It's very powerful. But what is more powerful is that she overcame it. So she's going to inspire you with that. Somebody had called and said, "Helen, this is a really triggering topic. I'm not sure I'll be there." I totally understand it, but I want to say, if that's you, that you will be inspired by what Tanisha is going to share with us today. Tanisha is here in Raleigh. She has worked with the Raleigh Police Department, Department of Corrections. Works with fathers. She works with sex offenders. She's been in the school system. Um, oh, she's been a guest on the Tom Joyner Morning Show. So she's been doing this for a while. She has been on the Montel Williams show. Now that was a long time ago, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
How long have you been doing this work on a public
Over
platform?
now, we'll say about over 30 years now. 21, and I had to go through it for 10. So ever since I got out of my domestic violence situation, yes, I have dedicated my life to this. So yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. And anyway, I'm going to turn it over to her at this point. She's going to tell us more about her work and what she does as she shares her story with us. Again, if you have questions, please put them in the chats. And I'm going to ask Pam and Dee if you can. I know you're on here. If you all can make sure that I'm grabbing all the questions that we get to ask for Tanisha, and she'll take them live when we're done. Thank you. It's all yours. Thank you again, Tanisha.
Thank you in advance, Miss Helen. Hello,
Okay.
ladies. Hello, ladies. Listen, first and foremost, before I get going, I always give an honor to God for allowing me to be able to have this platform, to be able to be amongst you all today, to share. I do know that this is a very touchy, dark subject that to be quite honest, me and Miss Helen, we were deciding on whether or not we were even. This was not going to happen today, as a matter of fact. This was supposed to happen a little bit later on next month, but because of all of the recent headlines and the recent domestic violence deaths and occurrences, that is why Miss Helen reached out to me and asked me to do it today. And I said yes. And that's one of the reasons why I'm in my car, because I said I was going to make it my business to be here and to speak with you ladies, because this happens every day, all day. And this is why I've dedicated myself to this work. And I got to say this. I'm glad that we are speaking of it, but let's be honest, going back to the fact that we weren't going to talk about this until it was brought to our attentions from a headline standpoint this soon. That is why I do what I do, because there are so many other Tanisha Bagleys. There are so many other, let's say, names that we would not hear about if it weren't for those headlines and if it weren't for the people involved having the status that they have. And so I go for everyone. I speak for everyone when it comes to this, because everyone is important. Although I'm very glad, it's like a twofold, that we are talking about it, and that's good and that's great. What happens later on today when someone that we don't know about or that is not prominent in society, that doesn't make the headlines, is dead or abused? And so I'm glad we're having this conversation. I thank you all in advance. I am going to open for any questions that you may have for me in the end, because I'm going to share first and then I'm going to open, and I want us to have this dialogue because it is so very much important. And you have me for however long, ladies, you would like to talk, I can talk too. So we'll do this thing together. But I thank you all. And so I'm going to share a little bit about my background first to kind of give you a little bit of understanding, and then that'll help us guide the conversation. So, listening to all of these stories and listen to what Miss Helen was sharing in the background and the things that we know of in these relationships, let's make it very clear. None of us knows what's going on in anybody's household. So I ask that we don't pass judgment. I ask that we keep an open mind, an open heart, and start leading with love and understanding and trying to find out what we can do to prevent this thing from happening, because that's where I'm at right now. I've been in these women's shoes. The difference is I'm alive to talk about it. I've experienced every aspect of domestic violence, rape, and sexual assault. And I know someone said something about intimate partner dating, or intimate partner violence. I call it domestic violence because everybody's not intimate. There is a lot of people, children, this is pets, men, women. You don't have to always be in a relationship to experience domestic violence. And so that's the reason why I call it that. I know a lot of times with these cases, we're talking about intimate partner violence, but it's not always the case when you think about bullying. And I want to encompass everything that's all things violent to bring awareness to it, because to me, everything stems from childhood. Everything stems from what we may or may not have experienced in life and as a child, and what leads us to be the adults that we are growing up. And so that's where it takes me back from my story. And for me, growing up young, born in the Bronx, New York, by my 16-year-old mother and my 20-year-old father. My grandmother scooped me up from the Bronx and brought me down to Virginia and raised me because she felt my parents were way too young to do it. And I was in and out of their lives. Always felt abandoned as a young child because I didn't have my parents. I was raised by my grandmother, and which I dearly love. But we all would love to be, raised by our parents. And so I had this relationship with my dad, which was inseparable until he and my mom split, and then there was no more relationship, and that devastated me. My mother went on to marry her first husband, and in her 8th month of pregnancy, after going out with some friends one night, 9 months, she corrected me, 9 months, he beat her so severely that the umbilical cord detached between her and the baby, and she lost him. And I later found out my grandmother was abused by my grandfather, and that was the reason she left him. And I saw these two women that I love so dearly get in and out of different relationships, and I always wanted to be different. And so when I met my high school sweetheart at the age of 14, I was 14, freshman in high school. He was a year older than me. He was 15. He said the first day he laid eyes on me, he knew I would be his wife. It was love at first sight. I didn't like him at first. He was conceited. He was arrogant. He was all the things that I didn't like, but he was also very intelligent, very, very smart, very charming, charismatic. And I knew he was going places in life. I knew as far as his background that, his mom, government worker, dad, actually in construction, doing very well for themselves. It was just him and his younger brother. Life was very good for them, but the father was abusive to his mom, and he couldn't stand his father. And he never understood why she stayed. He didn't understand. He didn't felt she needed his money, and it really bothered him. So when you looked at both of our relationships, when we got together, you wouldn't have thought that there was going to be any type of abuse, even though we were young. And it was great. Like I said, the first year we were inseparable. And it wasn't until we invited sex into our lives is when things started to change. Now he wanted to know where I was going, what I was doing, who I was, hanging around, my clothes. He controlled everything. But to me, being young, I thought it was just his way of showing me he loved me, that he cared for me. And that was just what I thought was okay. It was normal. And after we decided to move forward with the sexual part of our relationship, I can remember things turning worse because that's when the jealousy really kicked in for him. He thought I was seeing other guys, and that wasn't the case. He was just very, very controlling. And I can remember one day after school. We were arguing. I slammed the phone down. I didn't want to talk to him anymore. And blood started gushing from me. And I called him back and I said, listen, I don't know what's going on with me, but I'm bleeding. And he said, hey, tell your mom when she gets home. And I waited till about 3 or 4 o'clock the following morning, whereas this started for me about 3 or 4 o'clock earlier that day. And when my mother took me to the hospital, the doctor told her that had she found me that morning, she would have found me dead, that I was actually hemorrhaging to death, that I was having a miscarriage. And due to the fact that I had an emergency DNC to have the baby removed, I was told I should never get pregnant again within a year's time because I had a red blood disorder. And I took it very serious, but he didn't. He thought it was just our parents or the doctor's way of trying to keep us away from each other. And that clearly wasn't the case. And he wanted us to still engage in this act. And I can remember one night telling him no, I wasn't going to lie to my mom and tell her we were going to a party I knew we weren't going to. I knew he wanted to have sex. He hit me. And that was the first time he had ever slapped me. And as the tears streamed down my face, I said to myself, this can't be the same person who, one, couldn't stand his dad, knew about violence, would never abuse his wife or girlfriend. I was really in shock, but I believed him. I believed him when he said, I'll never hit you again. I'm sorry. Put a cold compress on your face. Please don't tell anybody. I'm sorry. And I believed him. And even though when I walked in that house, the first person I ran into was my mother, and she saw his handprint across my face. She tried to break us up. Grandma tried to break us up, but I believed him because you get the candy and the flowers and the cards and the I love yous and I'll never do it again. You believe that. And I truly believed him. But then shortly after, I heard the infamous phrase, if you ever leave me, I will kill you. And now I'm thinking, where in the world did this person come from? So I had to set the scene for you. But then shortly after, these are the things that he started to do. He had a dull knife where he would cut me all over my body with this dull knife. I still have cuts to this day. When I was in school, he forced me to skip lunch. And when I said no to take me off to a place where he wanted to have sex, he threw me down a flight of stairs. I've had where I was working a job. He walked in, he walked down the aisle, he punched me square in the nose, fractured my nose, walked out, act as if nothing happened. We were driving down the street one day and he thought I knew the guys in the car beside me, which I'd never seen a day before in my life. He hauled off and swung, black eye, every color of the rainbow. I've had busted lips. And then on top of that, he did all kinds of things. I was pregnant again within a year's time, pregnant 2 more times in high school, 2 more abortions. He was very smart. His parents, even one night he was sneaking in my house. He was in my house. My parents were on one end. We were on the other end. I would cook for him. He would eat the food. He interrogate me. He forced me to have sex with him and he'd crawl out the window and go home. My mother caught him one night, not inside, but outside, and she pressed charges. And his parents, they were like, listen, he's going off to college. Please don't ruin his future. We did everything. We tried. But this was in high school alone. And even when he went off, a year older than me, he went off to college. I was hoping and praying some new girl would find him and take him off my hands, but he still came back like clockwork every week. And he would abuse me and he'd interrogate me and he forced me to do things I didn't want to do. And the whole time I was thinking I was going to get away from him. I graduated high school. To this day, I don't know how, not because I wasn't smart, but because I didn't apply myself. And the whole time I kept thinking, I'm going to get away. I'm going to get away. I'm going to get away. But as I did, we actually wound up spending 3 months in the car, living in the car. He wouldn't go back to school. And when I finally got out, got an apartment, he came along. I was still hoping I'd get away. I was pregnant again. And I decided to keep this child, our first living child. And I tell you, even being pregnant, he abused me. I worked 2 jobs. Anything less than 6 figures was beneath him. He wouldn't work. I was working 2 jobs, coming home, and he'd beat me. Being pregnant still, he did not realize that he was being abusive. He was just so jealous. And even from me being pregnant, it still didn't register for me, but I always knew I wanted to get away from him. After having this child, a year after that, we got married. And even on my honeymoon night, he abused me. I still didn't tell anybody. Once again, I was thinking that he would stop and I would get away. Fast forward and wound up getting pregnant again within 22 months or so, had my second living child. He decided to work, and when he was working, things were good because all the money was there. He was having all the things that he was so used to having. I'm now a stay-at-home mom. I'm doing great. There's no more abuse. Everything is fine until he loses his job. And then when he lost his job, that's when the abuse came back. And it got worse and worse. When I got ready to leave this man, I called the local shelter. I called. I said, listen, I can't take this anymore. And they said, listen, if you and your kids want to flee domestic violence, you'll have to sleep on church pews because the shelters are full. There's no room for you. And I said, listen, I love the Lord like the next person, but I'm not taking my kids out of their beds to go sleep on church pews. So I stayed for an additional year. But when I tell you the last month that I lived with him, that man beat me every single day. I woke up to him dragging me out of the bed, pulling me by the hair, cutting my clothes off, throwing them in the trash, pouring food on top of them. The mental and the physical and the emotional abuse. He knew due to my fair skin that he needed to beat me from the neck below because I would have to hide with makeup or different things to hide the bruises, beat me throughout the head. I'd go to work and I'd smile and I'd laugh, but no one knew when I took that 30-minute drive home that I knew what I was in for if I was a minute late because he would beat me. He gave me full body cavity searches to convince himself I wasn't sleeping with anybody at my job. Then he forced me to have sex sometimes and then send me off to bed. The mental and the emotional, just sitting across from him for hours, not knowing if he's going to hit me or beat me or whatever. And then sometimes he'll say, listen, go to bed. I'm not messing with you tonight. The toil that it had on me from a verbal standpoint, after having now 3 kids, you're fat, you're ugly, nobody's ever going to want you. You hear all of those things. And the whole time I kept saying, I'm going to get away from him. You say after all of the kicking, the beating, the slapping, the punching, the financial abuse, I went to go get a pair of shoes without asking for permission. And he took the shoes and put them in the toilet and urinated on them because he didn't want me to have them. He knew my check before I knew my check. I would work and then he would take all the money. But you say, what made you snap? What made you finally leave? When I went to go chastise my 3-year-old son for playing in some water, and he looked at me and he pointed and he says, I'm going to tell Daddy to take you in that room and beat you when he gets home. And that's when I knew I was sending a message that I was no better than his father, that I was just as abusive as his father because I was allowing our children to witness him be abusive to their mother. I used to say he was an awesome father because he never abused our children. He wouldn't lay a hand on them. Those kids could burn the house down. I was the disciplinarian, but that was part of the manipulation because he knew I wasn't going anywhere. He knew my background. He knew my reasoning. He knew that I didn't want to send another Black man to prison. I didn't want my kids without their father. I didn't want to be divorced. I didn't want to go on welfare. I didn't want to be a single mom. I loved my husband. I fell in love with my best friend. I didn't fall in love with an abuser. And the thing about it is, I wanted so badly for him to get the help that he needed so that he can be better. Not for me, not so much as for our children, but for himself. But he just never would get the help that he needed. And then there was other reasons that I finally left him. But when I did, and stats will tell you 1 out of 7, 1 out of 9 times a woman or a male will leave or go in and out of their relationship before they finally leave a domestic violence situation. And for me, I was different because I started talking, I started telling people, I talked to my mom, I talked to his parents. I was like, I tried to get us help. I'm calling on the Lord. I'm calling on everybody. And my thing about it was, I just wanted him to stop. I knew there was something wrong. I couldn't pinpoint it. And I wanted, whether it be counseling or whatever, I just wanted it to stop. But he never would. And so when I left him one particular day and I never looked back. I went down to the police department. I called my supervisor. I said, listen, I'm leaving this man. She said, good, go. She knew. And I will tell you, my chances of dying were much greater. Because when I left him, September 17th, 1998, with a 5-year-old daughter, a 3-year-old son, and a 9-month-old son, this man would not let up. I went and did all of the things. I got a protective order. The judge gave me everything, even down to his parents' car that I was driving. He had a spare key to. And I did everything I could. I tried to stay away. He had the kids until I was able to, get my own place again. But I stayed away from it. I separated from him. But he would come to my job. He stalked me. I would get ready to go to work one day. He's in the rearview mirror, tried running me off the road, told the police he'd never seen me a day before in his life. It was a case of road rage. They locked him up and then they released him. His same parents that told me it was okay to leave him were the same ones that bailed him out every time. He took me behind a local Walmart where he raped me with the kids in the car. He took me that same night and across the state lines, took my sister and brother and threw them out the car and just took off. And then ultimately in December 4th, 4 months after I left him, I was getting off of work. I was in my car. I took 3 of my coworkers, 2 females and a male, and we go over our first speed bump. Security was supposed to watch my car, so I was driving them to the parking lot, and I go over a speed bump, and my trunk light came on. And I said, man, I haven't been in my trunk all day. And the ladies were like, hey, I hope your husband ain't put a bomb in here. And I said, I hope he hadn't either. So we're going to check it when we get up to the top of the hill. And when we got up to the top of that hill, I was lifting the trunk lever, sitting in the front seat with the car running. And one of the females, they tried to lift the trunk up and it wouldn't release. And the other female said, get out of the way, I can do it. And as she opened that trunk, out jumped my 6'2", 2 and some change husband. He was hiding in the trunk of my car. And I'll tell you, ladies, I kick my shoes off and I start running. But by this time, I got to tell you, I was tired. You see, before I left him, I was pushing almost 200 pounds. By the time this month, when this all happened, I was pushing about all 6 or 8. I had lost so much weight because he had stressed me out so bad. And I just kept telling my mom, I can remember saying, he's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. I knew this. I felt this. That night, as he's driving down the wrong side of the road, he gets me in the car and he's trying to gouge my eye out with his gun, biting my arms, and he gets me behind NC State's campus, where he takes me down by this warehouse, and it's this long, narrow walkway. And what happened was he takes me behind there, and that's where he tells me to take my clothes off. And after he does what he wants to do, I start talking. Survival kicked in for me. And the thing was, ironically, he was pulling me behind that warehouse. But now I talk so much, as I do now, that I was pulling him from behind that warehouse. And I said, listen, if you kill me, you're going off to prison. Our kids are going to be homeless, orphans. You don't want to do that. So let me help you. The fact that I hate putting gas in my car is what saved me. I stopped at the gas station where he was driving. He had to get gas. And as he got back in the car, a Raleigh PD officer came up behind us. And as we're driving down the road, the cop comes up behind us. And the whole time my husband was saying, I can't go to prison. I can't go to prison. And I said, just pull over. You're going to be fine. Just pull over. But when he pulled over, he panicked. And what started out is one cop car. He takes off. Now there's several. And there's a high-speed chase. We go down this hill, and down at the bottom, there's officers with guns drawn that I had never seen so much in my life. And as one of the officers comes and he opens the car door and then throws me over into the grass, they take him into custody, and that's how it ended. We wound up having to go back to the police station at night. My mother had gotten there, and she says, are you okay? And I said, Mom, he made me do it. And as the officer was taking notes, she said, make you do what? And I said, he made me have sex. And the officer looked at me and he said, ma'am, well, did you say no? And I said, officer, I always said no to him, but no just never meant no to him. And he said, well, then he raped you. And ladies, for the first time, I had to sit and realize that out of the 7 times I was pregnant in my lifetime, that only one time was consensual, and that's when we lost our virginity to one another. And that all 3 of my living children were conceived in rape. We had to go to trial. It was a 2-week trial. And prior to this trial, they did an evaluation on him to make sure he could stand trial. They found out that he had the depression of 10 people depressed combined, narcissistic behaviors, obsessive compulsive behaviors, bipolar, borderline psychotic. I mean, he had a lot going on, and that he needs to be on medication for the rest of his natural life. When we went to trial, his whole defense was there was no way a husband could rape his wife. And unfortunately for him, North Carolina passed a law a year prior to that husbands can rape their wives. He wound up spending 6 years active in prison. He was supposed to get anywhere between 15 to 20 years. And his whole thing was, I'm going to come out and kill you all. And I said, well, okay, I got 6 years. I got to get going. I got these 3 kids. And I tell you, ladies, that's exactly what I did. I got going. And I'm going to stop somewhere in between there because I want us to start opening this dialogue, because I know I've said a lot and I know you're going to have a lot of excellent questions. But I will tell you that he did spend the 6 years in prison. And there's a lot to unpack after, we start talking about this thing. So I'm going to open the floor right now to any questions, because I know you're going to ask me what I'm going to probably answer for you when you ask those questions.
Okay, I see one hand up. Narlene, you had a question? And first of all, let me thank you,
Anthony,
Tanisha, for being so forthcoming. And I'm trying to turn on my video. I'm trying to bring this. Okay, here we go. I'm trying to come back on screen with you. But
Okay.
thank you so much for being so forthcoming and sharing of your story. It says a lot about who you are, and there's no question in my mind that it wasn't empowering to other women on this call. So thank you, and we'll talk some more about your situation in a minute. But
Excellent.
any questions that you have, please raise your hand. I'll bring you on screen if you want. If not, you can just ask from the background. NC, go ahead. You have a question?
yes, I want to say thank you very much for sharing your story. It is really powerful, and and it's good that you also mentioned how childhood does impact these type of relationships in adulthood. I wanted to ask one thing, and with the cycle of abuse, there's
Mhm.
also a period of time where the abusers they sort of start being nice to you and love bombing you,
Mm.
and that's what keeps you staying in the cycle. So,
Mhm.
if you don't mind sharing how you experienced that and that how that affected you in staying in the relationship.
Yeah, he knew that. Once again, and thank you so much for sharing. And thank you to all the ladies. I see all the hearts and the love that you all are sharing. So thank you so much. Like I said, it's truly an honor for me to do this. Yes, the love bombing is so important, because once again, we fall in love with the person we fell in love with, the charmer, not the abuser. Think about it. Had he walked up to me and said, "Hi, my name is X," and slapped me for the first time, I would have never dealt with him, right? Nobody would. Nobody in their right mind would. So we always go back to what we fell in love with, who the person we know they are, because it's in them. That's part of the manipulation also, when they come back and they know this. And what that does is tells, us later on that you can get the help you need to truly stop this. You can. You can. You're just playing games right now. But I think a lot, because everybody's situation is different. Everybody stays for their own different reasons. I shared mine. A lot of times we're fixers, we're nurturers. That's why we have the babies and men don't. We're always somewhere trying to fix somebody, or say, hey, maybe if we give them another shot, or we give them what they need, they'll be better, or they'll stop. And who's to say? Can we simply say that a person may truly love that person and want that relationship and want the good and want to see the good? There's nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The point that I'm making now is that the abuser has to make the change and do the change and do the work to stop this thing from happening. And if they really want to, they will. So we have to look at things for what they are. If you're going to continue to go down the same cycle over and over and over again, and there is no change, then you got to do what you have to do to be safe and either get out of that situation, or get the help that you all need so that you can be better to stay in it. But something's going to have to give.
Thank you.
Um,
You're welcome.
There's a question in the chat. How do we talk about domestic violence with our families? I can remember hearing about a relative or two when I was young, growing up, but it was usually an open secret. Looking back now, that's just not acceptable. And I would imagine that's prevalent in most families, but maybe more so in our families, Black families. I'm not sure. Man, anybody who can speak to that, but what is your, how do we talk to, so we know that Uncle so and so is beating up Aunt
Mm-hmm.
Shirley? What
Mm-hmm.
are we saying? Are we acting
We
like we don't elephant in the room or what?
of course we are, and that's the problem. That's one of the chapters in my book, Family Secrets. That's the first one. And I got to tell you, some family liked it and some family didn't, but I'm going to be the truth teller here. It is what it is. And I say this, we have to start talking about these things because the silence and the secrets is what's killing us. And if we're going to keep protecting a predator or protecting an abuser, how do you expect anybody to want to stand up and say, I'm being abused or I'm being hurt? They're not listening. And it goes back to our kids. We're not believing them for whatever reason. I've heard a million a story that our kids say, I've told that mom's boyfriend or dad or mom is abusing me and nobody wants to believe me. I've been in prisons where men have said, I can remember being raped at 2 and 3 years old by my siblings, and I was the one that was sent away from the house. Or I can remember when Uncle X did XYZ to me and they didn't want to believe, or they protected them and they said I was the bad person. So we have got to place blame where blame is and stop re-victimizing the victims. But then we also, it is a cultural thing. We do this, we hear this a lot. What goes on in our house stays on in our house. We don't tell anybody. All of this, we got to stop that. We know better. We know better. We got to stop. And even if you want to protect the abuser, let's how about this? Get them some help. Get them some help. Because I've heard stories where a brother had killed another brother, and then guess what? The mother found a way, because she was in that field, to say, hey, this is what you can do, or we'll find them to be mental or something. And they didn't spend time in prison. And her understanding, or her way of thinking, was, I lost one son and I didn't want to lose another. And you know what? I can understand and I can see both sides. But people, if we want to see different, we got to do different, and we know better. And we got to get to the root as to why these abusers are doing what they're doing. And 9 times out of 10, it's something that happened to them first. That's why I'm so big on going into the prisons and speaking to our men, especially in the prison system, because that's where a lot of this stuff happened for them.
Yeah, I have another question that goes back to that, but Miss, so there's some hands. Let me try to get the hands, and I'll circle
Okay.
back to questions. Miss McCann, is that you? Miss McCann?
Not me. Think I'm showing up. It's me. And that Phyllis just got me. I've been trying to get on and couldn't. So I'm Pearl. Okay. And so Phyllis just sent me a link. She sent me her link. And
Okay.
and I was just so glad to get here, period. So let me say this. I don't know what's been said before, but I'll just say from being a victim of domestic violence and also working in the field for a large number of years in Kentucky. Um, when I leaving is not as simple as it can sound, and many times 2 of my clients got killed by leaving. I mean, when they left, and that can happen, so it can escalate because that whole thing about control and stuff, and you will do what I tell you, and you will act like I say. You are my woman. I believe, and I think a lot of it, for me, I think a lot of it comes down from slavery. That whole thing about, and I know people get tired of hearing that, but I don't think we've healed that. We have no way of healing that. And I don't disagree with anything I've heard since I've been on, but I just wanted to, I know 2 of my people got killed leaving, and it's because families don't understand. And my experience was, it was just as many white as it was black. I didn't see it as anything that was that, but if what is that they call it, where our DNA has changed over time? I can't think of, because of the trauma. I can't think of what you call it that. Anybody that the
Post-traumatic shock,
Yeah,
post-traumatic shock syndrome.
No, it's literally where dang, I'll put it in the chat when it comes up. But
Right.
our DNA structure has changed because of repeated trauma and the microaggressions and all of the kind of things that we all know that happen to people. Literally, we have inherited different genes. Our gene structure has changed, and there's a word for it. And the only reason I don't need that word, it'll come up, but I don't.
Felicia put it in the chat.
Okay, I'll put it in the check. But let me just say this. That's also true for other people, not just Black people. So if they came out of a system that thought they owned us and our ideas and our looks and they could do anything, well, they're thinking the same, they're doing the same thing. So I just throw that out there. But thank you for letting me share that. So glad I made it.
Thank you.
Phyllis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And can I say this? Can I say this too, piggybacking on what she just said? That's the one thing I wish we were all like when it comes to domestic violence, because it doesn't discriminate. It's just like she said. It's all across the board.
Class,
It costs,
race,
it does not
socioeconomic,
matter.
it
Yep.
doesn't matter.
Financial, creed, religion, sexual orientation, nothing. Can you imagine? And she's right. But we have to say we are going to get the help. There's so many reasons as to why we don't. We don't want to take ownership, I'm sorry, sometimes for nothing. We are embarrassed in saying that something happened to us. We are embarrassed to say we have a problem. We are embarrassed to go to therapy. We are embarrassed to go to counseling. We think everything is a stigma or somebody's against us. I don't want to, I personally, I know I need counseling more so now than ever. And I am quick to say, listen, if I know you have a problem, right? Let's take DV off the table. If you know you go to the doctor and he says you have an ailment and it could kill you, most of us are going to figure out a way to stay alive. Most of us are going to find a way to get better, take some medicine, whether it be medicine, medical prescribed or holistic, whatever. We're going to do what we got to do to get better, right? For those that don't, now that is a problem. But my point being is, we're going to do, shame on you that you don't want to get the help that you need to be better. And that's why we need to start having these conversations. We have got to stop re-victimizing people. We have got to start normalizing getting help and talking and sharing and stop the shaming and the pointing of the finger and all of those things. I understand we can take everything back and we can place blame on everything, whether it be slavery, whether it be our homes, whether it be the cycle. But what point in our lives do we as adults, as grown-ups, say enough is enough and I'm not going to do this anymore and I'm not going to make excuses? That's where I come into play and say we got to do better. We can do better. We can do better than this. But go ahead.
Let me jump on that. Thank you, Pearl, aka aka Miss McCant. But thank you so much. Thank you for your question. Let's talk a minute about, this whole thing. I have heard of situation. We talk about the whole family thing. I've heard of situations where mothers have encouraged their daughters to stay in these relationships for some of the reasons that you just, he'll get better. Maybe it's a family shame. I mean, have you ran into people who talk about their parents or their family members telling them to stay in a bad situation? And what do you say to them?
All the time. And it's wrong. It's wrong. Because that parent or that person wouldn't dare last a day in that person's shoes. And it could be for all the wrong reasons, because no one should be in any type of abusive relationship for nothing. That's why I say to young girls, and it's not a bad thing when you say to young boys and girls, let's please stop thinking this is a woman's issue. Once again, this is a everybody issue. I tell young people, period, young boys and girls, make sure that you don't have to be in anybody's relationship because of them financially giving you anything. Anyone emotionally or mentally giving you anything. Come on, love yourself enough. Make the choice that whatever or whomever you're going to be with is a compliment and not a completion to your relationship. You should already be complete. You should already be complete. And that doesn't mean that you're better than the other person or because you got it going on and the other person doesn't. Please stop that. It's about, you know what? You are not going to financially hold the fact that you make more money than me or that I don't work or that I have to ask you to go get personal hygiene products when it comes to my monthly, or to ration out the money to me. Yes, these are things. These are things that happen. These are the things I hear. And no one should ever have to go through that. So there's got to be another reason as to why someone is asking you to stay in an abusive relationship, because they wouldn't. Nobody should.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing on family, you talked about your ex, hating his father for doing these things to his mother, and then he turns up to do the same thing. I think we can all speak to that at some point too. What do you tell, I guess when you're working in the prisons and what have you, you're talking to these male inmates, I'm guessing. What are they saying?
They're saying the same thing. The very people that we try not to be like, we do sometimes turn out to be. And we hate them for it. But what I do in the prisons, which is so phenomenal, is when I'm going in there with those guys, I'm saying to them, listen, I don't know what you've done. I don't care what you've done. I haven't read your jacket. Somebody has already judged and juried and trialed you, and you are in here for however long, and that is not my concern. Well, my concern is that you're getting the help that you need, one, that you're taking ownership for whatever it is you've done, that you are taking ownership. You're getting the help that you need to be better, not only for yourself, for those that you're involved with. Because let's face it, ladies, a lot of them have family, they have children, they have wives, they have girlfriends, whomever, and a lot of them are getting out. They're getting out, they're coming out, and we need them to be well. And that's why it's a less than 2% recidivism rate, because it is working. And for those that are in there for the wrong reasons, we have those conversations too. Shame on you, but I'm hoping that, I know for a fact they're still listening and they're getting something out of it. But for someone who's taken that ownership to be better, to recognize what the issue is, and a lot of them will tell you, I keep hearing the same thing over and over and over. It is mommy and daddy issues. It is sibling issues. It is life's issues. It is things that has happened that make you say, I'm not making excuses for you, but I understand. And whatever it was, I hope and pray or wish that you would have gotten the help that you needed prior to you doing what you did to land in prison. So that's why the two groups, that one being prisons, and also our kids, our young people, is so big for me too, because I'm all about the prevention and the awareness part. I don't want our young people to go to prison, and I don't want the ones that's in prison to get out and go back in. So what are we doing? We're going to resolve this thing. Because a lot of us are saying a lot of the same things, that it happened somewhere along the line. We just didn't get the help that we needed to be better. And that's the conversation we need to keep having. What can we do to help them?
Ms. Parham, your question, please.
Thank you so much. My question was sticking with the prisons, and having been a medical director at a prison, I boiled it down to, for the women, falling in love with the wrong man, and for the men, emotional illiteracy. So that was 20 years ago. I want to ask you, from the elder perspective, where can the cycle be interrupted? Because all I saw with a women's prison was Girl Scouts Beyond Bars, help the next generation. They were with their moms one time, and 3 times a month they were out in the community, because they were learning the wrong shit from their mothers who were in prison. All right. So that was an interruption point. Trying to do an interruption point at birth with midwives, helping the women. They still got shackled to the beds, having their babies. For the men, all the bright men were in the prison section of DC General Hospital. They were inmates, they were groomers, they knew how to talk, they were slick, and none of them could express happy, mad, sad, or glad.
Yes.
What do we do?
Go back to the basics. You said it. It is going back to the basics. And that's what these programs are that I go into. Fathers on the Move, they teach them everything. It's like starting all over again. It's allowing them to express their emotions, express how they're feeling, and deal with conflict resolution. And it's amazing to see, because a lot of them, for the first time, I got to tell you, when I've gone in there, that's the first time they've heard "I love you" is from a bishop in prison. Some of them have never even heard "I love you." Some of them have never heard "You matter." Some of them have never heard it's okay, especially as young boys. That's why I say how we treat our young boys When they fall and hurt themselves, and a lot of us moms, get up, you don't cry, you don't do this, you got to let them cry. I'm afraid of a man that doesn't cry. I tell you that. And I'm afraid of one that doesn't express his emotions. But if you've been taught at such a young age that you're not allowed to do those things, and you got to be tough, and you got to be this, and you got to be that, that's hard. That's hard on a grown up. And so then you go into these marriages and these relationships, and everything is hard, hard, hard. But I tell you, I go in there and these men cry like babies. When I share my story, I got grown men standing up saying, I was your husband. I have raped. I have abused. I was that person. I see myself. And they're like, I want to be better. How amazing is that? How amazing is that? But you know why? I don't go in there pointing fingers. I don't go in there, once again, like I said, saying, I know you're this, so you're that. Oh, you don't deserve a second chance. You don't deserve to get help. One of the things I open up with, I say, guys, I've been pregnant 7 times in my lifetime. I know I was pregnant. Either you're pregnant or you're not. I've signed my name to abortions. I'm a murderer. The difference between me and some of y'all, I just haven't done time in prison for it. So who am I to judge you all? And when people ask me that question on the outside, and they ask me, why am I going to this prison? I share that story too, and it quiets them. Because it makes them stop and think, who am I? And once again, you got to look at the bigger picture. They're coming out. They do matter. I tell those guys, they matter more in prison than now, more so than ever. These young kids, our girls, the moms, we need them. We need them. And all people aren't bad. We got to stop that. We got to stop that. We got to stop throwing people to the wolves and saying, they can't get better. That's just not true. We got to change the dialect. The dialogue. We got to do some things different in order to see different. And I come in from an empathy, sympathy, compassion, loving standpoint. And that's what makes them stop and think. First of all, oh my God, this woman coming in here, they are scared to death. And by the time I finish up with them, we're kumbayaing and they're figuring out what we're going to do to get better. I've done my job. I've done my job.
Talk to us about your ex. Do you have a relationship with him now? Do your children have a relationship with him? And do any of your children exhibit his terroristic behaviors? Because that's what they are. It's terrorizing somebody else. So what do you find?
Excellent question. No, I do not follow him. I have an idea, but I do not. He is not my concern. My concern for him as my brother, because he will always be my brother, is to be better for not only himself, for whomever he's with. At one point, it was to be better for our children. Our children are grown now. It's up to him on how he wants to have his relationship with his children. It is not up to me. And speaking of that really quick, I got to say this. That's why I'm so quick to have these conversations with parents in general, because it goes both ways, right? We have good parents that keep good parents away from our children for whatever reason. We got to stop that, because that's a form of abuse. That's a big form of abuse. We got to cut this out. We got to stop that. Even though he did a lot of horrific things to me, I never blocked his opportunity to get better and be a better father for our children. So he can never say I was the cause of their relationship not being better than what it is, because that wasn't my job. I stayed away from him. That me and him was done. But I tell you, had he gotten the help that he needed and been a better man, a better father, he could have had a better relationship with our children. But that was his choice. But there are some men that have done some things, some wrongs, and they really are good fathers. It has nothing to do with the other parent. And I think we need to start talking about that too, because that's a whole nother topic on how we treat each other when we're not in a relationship with that other parent anymore. And it comes to those kids, that's abuse. That is another form of domestic violence. You are keeping your kids away from the good parent. That's ugly. Now, as far as my children and the terror, I tried very hard at a young age, especially when I left with them being 5, 3, and 9 months, I thought that I left at a good time that I can correct, like course correct what was going on. Sometimes you just can't. And I have some great kids. I have some great kids. Are there not some things that are later on down the road that I said, oh, I can see a sign, or I can see a temper, or I can see an act, or I can see how you handle a situation that it may remind me of their father? Of course, of course. But I'm quick to say, as a mom, you need to correct that. Let's get that fixed. That's when you go in and say, that's not tolerated. And I say this, my boys love their mama. But I want you to have that same love you have for that mama, your mama, that you have for the women that are in your life. They all have daughters. God is so humorous. Oh my God, we laugh all day, me and my daughter, because they got girls. You wouldn't want this to happen to your daughters, right? It goes back to having those conversations. It goes back to saying, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Right is right and wrong is wrong. I don't care who you are. I don't.
That's right.
And we're not going to make excuses for your behavior, because that is why we're in the situation that we're in right now. I could not make excuses for no one, especially
Did
my
he
kids.
ever apologize to you or your children?
I don't know if he has to my kids. He never apologized to me. And I got to tell you, that's kind of all I ever really wanted, because I forgave him. I forgave him before he even abused me. That's how much love I have for that man. I had for that man. I still love him. It's an agape love. I'm not in love with him. You can love someone as your brother. He will always be my brother. And I want the best for him. And I tell you, all I ever wanted was, I'm sorry. That's it. But a big thing for me was, all I really wanted was him to admit that he did all of those things. And I did get it when we went to trial, because for a long time, it's part of the crazy making. You think you're crazy. I'm thinking, is this stuff really happening to me? It wasn't until the law came out at trial that I had to explain and share all of the horrific things he did. And I was like, oh my God, am I lying? Did that happen? Did that really happen the way that I think it did? And for him to actually get on that stand and admit that he kicked, he bit, he spit, he fought, he abused, he forced me to do all the things, that's when it was a release for me. And I was like, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. So no, he never apologized, and that's okay. He can keep his apology, because as far as I'm concerned, the forgiveness that I have for him outweighs the apology that he could ever give me. I'm so embedded in the love, and that I don't need it. I'm good, because I apologized to myself and I forgave myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me see. I'm trying to go through these questions really quick. Nancy, did you have another question? I saw your hand, but it went away. I don't know if you still had another question.
Not a question, just a more like a comment. And I've heard a lot of expression of needing to have compassion for abusers, and especially people who are incarcerated, and what happened in their childhood and what they experienced. I've been researching a lot on domestic violence, as well as part of my work as part of my work, where I work with victims of domestic violence. And also I have my own personal experience, especially with my childhood and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to caution everyone that abuse does not turn someone into being an abuser.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I asked the initial question regarding the cycle of violence and the wheel of power and control, also I didn't mention that, but I'm mentioning it now, is to highlight how abusers, they can and they do treat you better at some point during the abuse, and that is what keeps you stuck.
Mm-hmm.
So the compassion is important, it is necessary, but it has to be for yourself first.
Right. I agree.
It has to be for yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing is, what I've from what I've researched, and I would like to there was a book called Why Does He Do That? Um by Lundy Bancroft, who is the first person to put together an abuser program um, for men. And honestly, what we are doing as women, this is our feminine side, this is our nurturing side. What abusers need is accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And we cannot hold the men accountable the way another man can. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of
Hmm.
abuse comes from patriarchy and the notion that they have to dominate over men, over women and
Mm-hmm.
children, and
Mm-hmm.
also men dominate over men. So this is not an issue. And yes, there are certain patterns that repeat there are certain things that happen in childhood that do impact somebody becoming not becoming an abuser per se, but being susceptible to abuse. But
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, it's a choice.
That's right.
And the other thing too that is very, very important, abusers have listed the reason why they abuse. It's not because of childhood, it's because it works for me. I get what I want. And I know I'm gonna say this may be like a soft spot, but the abuse was like, I want sex, and I'm gonna this is what I'm gonna do to get sex, and that's it. And I know I'm being very direct with that, but that's the story we have here that we are talking about. But it's not because of like, oh, my dad used to beat my mom. It's like, oh, what did I do? Because many men, they say my dad used to beat my mom, and I would never do that, and they actually don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
They actually don't do it. So we have to keep these things in mind. It takes a lot of work. And for like a short period of time, abusers can say, oh, like I'm not gonna abuse and that's it. And also like there are certain things, like for example, there was a mention of a man crying. Like if a man doesn't cry, I know a man who was very sensitive and would cry, and I've seen that man cry, and I've cherished those moments, and these were like private moments. And at some point, once the need to gain um trust or control or propriety, because that's what it turns into. You might I own you now, right? Once that happened, I didn't see those tears anymore. So there are certain things, and the other part is part of the conversation was the whole thing about you have to love yourself. It is great. It is true. You have to love yourself, but the
Mm-hmm.
person does not start that way, and you are conditioned. And I would say, even if someone is being abused, in the moment of being abused, like there are certain things that people do in order to survive. All of that are part of the love that they have for themselves. So I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to I just wanted to mention that it is not going to prison. It is not statistically, and again I'm referring to that book again. Why does he do that? By Lundy Bancroft. It is not going to prison. It is not, and it's not slavery per se. Although we did learn certain things in slavery, of course, and a lot of the traditions were taken away from us, and we were given new traditions. It's not just that. I would just caution everybody to look more into why men abuse, and that book is a very good place to start.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to respond to that before we talk to because of Nicole
Yes,
and
can I?
Tamaya?
Hi,
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I can go. I can go now.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. And
Hi,
then I'll
everybody.
respond.
Okay, hi. I am because of Nicole and Tajamia's Urban Awareness and Wellness Foundation, and what I do is domestic violence and bullying. I'm based right here in East Orange, New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
Over 20 years of awareness, support, and healing group. I lost my sister to domestic violence. How I became an advocate and anything is trying to get her to a safe house because my sister was abused tremendously by her husband. I saw the signs when she didn't even see the signs when it was just first starting, just from just narcissist behavior and controlling behavior. That's how it all started and manipulating. So they come in different types of forms because he was one of the kids that was abused by his mother's boyfriend. So he hated women. He
Mm-hmm.
hated women. had no respect for women at all. So it's all types of different ways that these domestic violence men are formed. Not always because they soft, not always because they was abused, not always because they wasn't, because he was one that was abused by his mother's boyfriend, and he hated women. So he abused my sister. He started off with manipulation. That's how he started it. And then breaking down her self-esteem. And then once he broke down her self-esteem, that's when the physical and the sexual abuse took place. And we tried to get her to safety for 2 years before he killed her. They were together for 7 years. And it was 7 years of abuse. And he killed her in front of their son because she had 6 children prior. And sometimes, like I've also wrote a book, ladies. It's called Love Shouldn't Hurt Behind Closed Doors. And this is what people don't know, what all that goes on behind those closed doors. Everything looks glittery and glamorous on the outside, but in the inside, they're going through hell. So that's why I wrote the book Behind Closed Doors, and it shows the different signs and symptoms that start off early on, and it educates people so you really know what domestic violence is, so you can be aware of it before it even happens. Because we have to look for those early warning signs too, because they are there, but people also ignore those signs.
That is true.
I do support groups on every Wednesday from 6:30 to 9 p.m. and every Saturday from 12:30 to 3:30 p.m. And I'm right here in East Orange, New Jersey, if anybody would like to come out.
And people
But
join you.
Tanisha, I love. Oh, okay. My sister-in-law's in Georgia. Tanisha, I love your passion. I just love your strength. Keep going, keep going. And I'm very, very strong on affirmations. Girl, you are doing amazing. You are a gift from God. Your story is meant to be heard, and it is meant to be a blessing to help someone else. Do not forget that. Through every story, there is a lesson, and out of that story comes a blessing. I'm a firm believer in that.
Thank
So
you.
you keep on pressing, baby. Keep on
Thank you.
pressing.
And
You're
I thank
welcome.
you. I thank you for sharing. I thank you for sharing your story, doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
That's
20
why.
years of awareness, and now
Yes.
I am finally a 501c3 nonprofit. For
Excellent.
20
Excellent.
years, I've been doing this on my own. I'm just now becoming a nonprofit.
Excellent. I'm right there. Listen, I understand when you have a love and a passion for this work. Listen, I've been
That's
doing it for
right.
almost 30 something years by myself too. And
That's right.
book written, all of those things, all of those beautiful things to continue, but it's much bigger than we are. And
That's
it's
right.
just keep on sharing and
I
doing
would
what you're
love for
doing.
us to connect. Are you in Georgia too?
No, I'm in North Carolina, and I'll get you
Okay.
my information. Yes.
Definitely,
Anything I
definitely.
can do to help. Thank you.
Yes, I love it. And keep me abreast with this group, please.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so
I'm not
welcome,
sure.
Helen. Thank you for having me.
Yes, come again, please.
Yes, Miss
Please.
Young invited me to this group. She always comes to my support groups. Someone on here is friends with Miss Young.
Okay. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Love the
Thank
news.
you.
So come again. You'll be on my email list. So just tell me, like, stop sending me emails, but you'll see
Oh
the
no,
topics if
that's
you want to
fine.
come
That's
join.
fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
All righty. Thank you. So,
You're
so
very
Tanisha,
welcome.
there was a whole lot packed in both of those questions. And somebody in the chat said, "Put what are the signs? What are the signs that happen? It doesn't just like even your situation. It didn't just start as abuse. I don't know. It's
That,
Could you just
choice.
ask me to mute her mic? I think that's
I'm sorry.
yeah, we're getting feedback. I think it's from D. Ashley. If she could mute her mic.
Okay, I'll mute her. Let me give you co-host and you can handle those things for me. Yeah, I heard that. I didn't know if it was coming from the last lady that we just spoke with. Okay, so you got co-host, Phoebe. So go ahead. So what were you saying? Tanisha, you're muted. Tanisha. You're muted. Tanisha, you're muted. Uh, Tanisha, I'm mute.
There we
Okay,
go.
there you go.
Okay.
There you
Yeah,
go.
she switched over. There's so many complexities. I love listening to the different reasonings, whether it be your whys, whether it be your this, your red flags, your this, that, and the other. There is no cookie cutter answer to domestic violence. I have been listening to relationships in different situations where a woman said, I was with this man. We've been married for years on years on year. The first time he ever hit me or abused me was when he cut her arm off with a machete. No sign of abuse. None. Then I've heard relationships where it started from the very beginning. They knew it. Within a day or two, a week, a month of the relationship, all the signs were there, still stayed. And everything in between. There is no real right answer. All we can ever do is sit around and try to figure out why. But the question we need to start asking is, why doesn't he or she stop? That's what we need to be asking. And so it goes back to whatever the reasons, however it started, when it started, whatever. What are we going to do when it comes down to making it stop? That's what we need to be having the conversations about, because we can go all day and night trying to figure out why a person does whatever. We need to act. We can't answer why we may eat potato chips at 2:00 at night every night, but we know there's something to help prevent it, or something to help get us the help if we really want to stop it. And I guess that's where I'm at when it comes to this topic. Is there's no right or wrong answer. It really isn't, because every situation is different. If I go back to mine, knowing that he couldn't stand his father, he was dealing with domestic violence, but yet he abused me. The only thing I can think of is maybe he felt that was the way he saw his father keep his mother. And he felt that the only way to keep me was to do the same things that his father did to his mother, because he couldn't stand the abuse. I know it doesn't make sense or sometimes, but that was my rationale. That was my way of thinking. I said, because he knew better. He knew better. He knew what he was doing, but he kept on doing it. Right. So that's neither here nor there. What I was more concerned about was, what can we do to make him stop? Because I can tell you, ladies, if he had gotten the help that he needed, if he had stopped for a moment and say, I really want to be different, I will never abuse you again, we would still be married today. I can say that. I can say that.
Right.
Because I really believed in what we had. Right. So it's tough. It's tough. Nobody has all the answers, but I really wish that we would start focusing more on what can we do to stop these things from happening in the first place. Because we all know that it's never going away. But what can we do to prevent and to educate and bring more awareness to it, that there is it's a problem. It's a problem, not just with us and not just with us women. We talked about that, Miss Helen. I wish maybe we should have had the men on here, but I'm glad we have just the women first. And we can always, but we need our men, because not all men are bad. That's just like saying all black men are the same. That's like saying all black women are the same. We are not. We have got to stop painting with such a broad brush. We got to stop doing that. We have to stop that.
So one of the things that has been alluded to already, I used to work in a prison too, and there were just certain crimes that if you were doing time for like abusing a kid or whatever, you're going to do some hard time. So they had like their own code of ethics. I
Yes.
haven't been working in the prison in many years. What is the pushback from other men, or is that what we need? Um, how do non-abusers relate to abusers? I mean, because the myth is that men who beat women probably cannot fight men
Mm-hmm.
usually, and they know they're doing something wrong because they hide it. They shield themselves from the cops, from the family, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think the peer pressure part will help at all with that? Diane, don't go away. And the real Pam, the real Phyllis McCann, I got you next. And then we got the other Phyllis McCann. But go ahead. What about the male to male influence? Does it matter?
It does matter. It's very important. We need our men, the ones that's not out here doing these things, to step up and say, no, it's not acceptable. No, get some help. whatever reasons or whatever the reasons that you're doing this, let's find out what that is. Let's get to the root cause of that and get you the help that you need, because it may not have nothing to do with this woman. They could just be taking all their anger out on that woman or that man that they're dealing with. Okay. So we don't know. We just got to get to the root of all of this anger and whatever it is. And you're right. Somebody said our men need to support our men. We need to stop shunning each other. We need to support each other as a whole. Don't get me started on how we treat each other as a whole, whether it be men or women. I'm just so over us and how we treat each other, period. I'm over it. I'm over the light skin, dark skin, this, that, and the other. I'm over all of it. It is not necessary. We are too advanced and too educated, and we are much bigger than all of this that we are going through and putting ourselves and each other through every day, all day. I can't. I have no tolerance for it. I just don't. I'm sorry. I don't. We stop it.
Yeah. Miss McCann, let me do Diane Bay. You had a question?
Well, actually, it was more of a comment, and that was with respect to preventative measures.
Mm-hmm.
I know that at one point when my daughter was very, very young, the attitude, and I was guilty of it as well, was when a little boy would pull her hair or push her or whatever, it was because he liked her.
Mm-hmm.
And that it might be true. So what? But you don't want your kids, particularly your little girls, to get used to a person showing their affection for you by being abusive. So we have to start we have to do the preventive measures as well as the intervention.
Mm-hmm.
And there's
That's a good
also this is my last comment. There's also a pattern of abuse. It doesn't just start with somebody chopping your hand off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it starts with the verbal abuse, embarrassing you in front of other people, and it just
Jealousy.
progresses from there. So again, we have to get to a point where we, as well as teaching our girls and our kids, that that kind of behavior is not to be tolerated.
And that's amazing.
Jealousy. He's jealous. He wants to be around me all the time. You think that's love. That's not.
No.
Jealous kind of fella is not the kind of guy you want to be with, because
That's right.
at some point it blows up. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry, Tanisha.
No, you're absolutely right. And I'm glad she made that comment too, because we got to stop making them think that. I've heard a lot of women say, listen, if he's not slapping me or beating me, he doesn't love me. Like, what in the world? Yes, they do believe that. They've been shown that. They've been raised to think that, because it may be something that they are used to or grown up watching and thinking that's okay because it's the norm. And until someone steps in and says, no, that's not normal, that's not how it's supposed to go, you're going to keep having that cycle where you keep raising other kids or having other kids thinking, other family members thinking that it's okay because it's tolerated, and no one stepping up and saying, no, it's not. So I'm glad she made that statement, because it's true. They don't let anybody abuse you in any way. That is not a form of liking you. That is a form of abuse. They can show you they like you in other ways, in loving and caring ways. It just goes back to teaching them anything. It's not acceptable.
Sending the wrong message.
That's right.
Miss McCann, what was Miss McCann?
Teaching our boys how to express themselves as well.
That's right.
In appropriate ways. Thank you for letting me share.
And early on, teaching our boys and our girls what is appropriate. Miss McCann, you had a comment or a question?
Yes. I'm going to piggyback off of how you introduced the session today, Ms. Higgy, regarding Lieutenant Governor Fairfax. I live in Virginia. I went through his tenure during the COVID pandemic, and he was up for election of the governor when two women came forth, as you mentioned, and accused him of sexual misconduct. Well, He apparently never got over that. He admitted premarital, I guess, in college with these young ladies or whomever. But he was on a spiral, as I see it. He started to drink, and to my understanding, he just out of control until last week. Well, I can sort of relate. Back in the 70s, my husband, who was in higher education, let me put it in this fashion. We have to address some of these aggressive women also. I mean, they will come in your house and flirt with your husband and meet, and men are men, and they will, accept accordingly. So how are we dealing with some of these, what they call nymphs? That's what they used to call them on the island of Bermuda. And don't think I'm just speaking out of turn here. As Ms. Hickey knows, I am 84 years old. I've seen, observed, and watched over the years in 3 different states how women will attack and attract men. And yes, it's up to them to be the strong one. But in the meantime, I could never understand how women do not observe or respect the ring on a wife's finger. I've never understood that. And at 84, I guess I'm still too naive. So there's a lot of flirtation that goes on the female's part in damaging and then coming out when the gentleman is ready to become a governor. 2 of them came out. And while he admitted to it, as I stated, it was pre-marriage. It was consensual, and it was before he married. Now, I guess that forgiveness did not, it just carried on. So we're talking COVID. He would have been the governor if elected 2022, somewhere in that neighborhood, and would have been just finishing up his term this year as Youngkin, the Republican, took over once that came out. So I just wanted to share that some of our flirtatious women need to address their behavior as far as married men are concerned. I don't know if it has any pertinence to the topic today, but I did eventually divorce my husband after 37 years. And it was mainly verbal abuse in that regard. So with that, I'm just sharing.
Okay.
I'd love to answer that question, and thank you so much for it. It goes both ways, and I'm glad you brought this up, because it goes back to what we said earlier. Domestic violence doesn't discriminate. It goes both ways. Women can be just as abusive as men. Women can do some of the most heinous things that men can do. There's plenty of women. I hear the stories all the time. There are some phenomenal men that say, my wife or my girlfriend is abusing me. And it just goes both ways. And we talk about it more with women because we hear more of the stories that it's more men that are perpetrating against women. But all of it is wrong. And you're right. I'm glad you brought up the comment about, women and doing things against men and not respecting other people's marriages. And those things happen also. And it's all wrong. It is. But we have to hold each other accountable. We do. It doesn't matter. I mean, if your relationship, you can be as solid as you think you are, and something could come in and get through. That's only if you two allow it, or one or the other person in the relationship allows it to happen. It's not going to happen unless that other person allows it to happen. It's still wrong. It is. And I know I love to share this. For example, I've saved the many a marriages because I do respect people's marriage. I've had a married men who have wanted to have a relationship with me. And the same woman would be so upset with me. And I said, you have no idea that I told him to the same that you think that you're going to do with me. You need to go put that energy towards your wife and your marriage and get on, because that's not of me. It's just, it goes back to the respect, not only respecting another person's marriage, but respecting yourselves. A lot of people just don't have respect for themselves to do those type of things. I don't want nothing that's not of me. And I tell you, I'm glad you brought that up too, because there is a law, it's called alienation of affection. We have it here in North Carolina. Whereas, if you're married and you go in and you tamper with another person's marriage, or for whatever reason, you can be sued, and they can take you for everything you have. So that's something to think about too. I mean, it's just morally it's not right, but on top of that, it goes both ways. And whatever the reasons as to why he did what he did, it's unfortunate all across the table. I feel horrible for everyone involved, especially their children, And you have to think about it. Loved ones on both sides are feeling this right now, and they will have to live with this for the rest of their lives. And I hope and pray that when you talk about that situation and how it all started for him, whatever happened with him and the former ladies that accused him of whatever happened, or I hope and pray that it wasn't false. Or even if it was, just think of the outcome and how this whole thing may have contributed to the results that has happened. And it's so unfortunate all the way around. It just is. And I'm not making excuses for anyone, because it's all wrong. And I wish that he would have had some hope in his heart to get the help that he needed, instead of the outcome that has happened. It's just unfortunate.
There's a lot of there's a lot of discussion going on online around his situation. And people are explaining that, he went through um, public humiliation, something that would happen to other people in private. It happened to him in a very public way, where he loses his career. He can't get work. You're hearing a whole bunch of stuff. And so it's almost, um, there's this discussion between men and women, where women are feeling like men are making excuses for him because of these kinds of things, and blaming it on mental health. And people saying these people aren't all dealing with mental health issues. Some of them are just evil.
That's right.
And so, but like you said, we never know.
That's right.
We don't know what happened with these. And my understanding was that at least the first woman who came forward was a college friend of his. So this happened not while he was in public life or even married, but it happened while they were both students at whatever school they went to. That's the first woman that I can remember coming forward, and I'm not sure who else have come forward since then. But clearly, it killed his opportunity to ever be governor. And he was the right, like the woman, the vice mayor in Broward. They were both rising stars politically, young Black rising stars politically, and their careers ended by this kind of thing. So we just never know. But I hate to see that, people are arguing it out online.
Right.
Trying to make an argument. But as you say, because we don't deal with enough that, there are women who abuse. There are women who abuse
Yes.
men. There are women, yeah. And, men are, for the most part, not going to come forward and saying they're being abused by their spouse.
Oh, no,
So.
no. That's why a lot of them either end up dead or they leave quietly or whatever. They're not going to tell their friends, their brothers, their family members that they're getting abused by a woman, because it makes them feel less than a man. I've heard that a million times over, for whatever reason. And it's still wrong. It's all wrong. But you're right. You're going to get a lot of public opinion. And I just say that we still need to be careful when it comes to the public opinion because nobody was in their relationship. And what I think about when it comes to this case in particular, she felt safe enough that even when she knew he was going to be served with divorce papers and they still stayed in the same house together. So
That's
think about
interesting.
that. Think about
But
that.
with
She
that,
had to feel safe enough that that probably was the furthest thing from her mind that he would do any harm to not only her or himself or their children. So let's
there's a
stop
few
and think
things.
about that.
There's a few things there. So one, and this is we don't know. We're just getting
Right. We
secondhand
just don't know.
information.
Right.
But apparently, they've been living in the same house, but not together since 2024. The marriage
Mm-hmm.
has been over. So she finally filed sometime in 2025. So now it's a public thing. People know their
Right.
marriage is over, and they probably were
Right.
keeping up appearance sakes for the family, for the kids, or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
So now when she files, it's public knowledge that their marriage is over. At some point, he accuses her of physically assaulting him. And maybe unbeknownst to him, she had cameras put in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not substantiated that she had ever assaulted him in any kind of way.
Right.
So when that fell through, and then he was just ordered by the judge, get out of the house by the end of April.
That's right.
And I can't imagine that he didn't have anywhere to go or the means to get somewhere to go. Who knows what was going on?
You
But
don't.
for whatever reason, this is how he decided to end it. And his children are in the house when he does this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even the couple down in Florida, like nobody seems to even know that they were having problems. They were high school sweethearts, and as far as everybody knew, she was crazy about him, he was crazy about her.
Mm-hmm.
She was going, high places, and he was along for the ride, and maybe he felt insecure. I don't know
That
what the
happens
situation.
sometimes too. That
Yeah,
happens sometimes. They're jealous of the other partner. They're jealous of where the other partner is doing. They feel that the other partner may be more accomplished or getting more attention than the other,
right.
and how that's going to change in the future and that dynamic. And you just don't know. So, whatever it is, whatever the reasonings may be, all of it is wrong. All of it. And
Yeah,
that's what we keep talking about. We got
for
to
sure.
tackle
For
these
sure.
issues.
Yeah. Okay, let me take one more question because of Nicole, and if anybody else has a question, please, you're more than welcome. We're gonna let Tanisha go, but what's your question, Nicole?
Okay, hi, how are you again? So, I just wanted to piggyback off of a couple of things, but the one I wanted to say about was the verbal abuse. Verbal abuse is very, very popular when you're dealing with domestic violence. Some people seem to think that verbal abuse is not a big ideal, but it really is a big deal because guess what? It lowers your self-esteem and makes you feel like you're nothing. I know so many women that were verbally abused and really, they thought it was okay. He just cursed me out when he get mad. It's never okay to curse me out because you're mad. Walk away.
Mm-hmm.
Have respect.
Mm-hmm.
You don't make nobody feel less than a person and think that that's okay. Because I know men that have actually been verbally abused by women,
Mm-hmm.
and they thought that it was okay because it was their wife that, cursed them out. It's okay to say what you have to say, but it's a way that you say it. That's why I always build on red lights, green lights. It's red flags that we look out for. And we try to build healthy relationships, especially when you're speaking with someone and you're angry. It should be another way that things should be said where it don't escalate to a verbal abuse or physical abuse, because sometimes it could be just a conversation that can cause a big confliction. So that's why I think, verbal abuse is very, very serious too. It's not only physical, it's verbal as well.
Remember the
And men
verbal
get it.
abuse, even with our children, the verbal abuse.
Absolutely, absolutely. I had three daughters and one son. My sister left behind six boys and one girl. And they all are very much into domestic violence. They all know about it. My grandchildren, I do annual walks every year. I educate them. I teach them about kindness. They know it all. And I let them know that this is the way you want to be treated. And my grandson is 7 years old, and he can sit here and tell you a whole story about domestic violence because that's what I've been instilling in him since he was 4. Because I think you have to let these kids know early, especially our little girls, because so many young girls feel like if a boy beat her up and buy her a gift, that's not domestic violence. They feel like that's okay. No, baby, that's financial abuse. And it's trauma that's going to hurt you in the long run because you're going to think any man that beats you up and buy you a gift, it's okay. So we have to educate our children because they are so into this materialistic stuff right now. And they feel like if a man buy them a Gucci bag and a pair of sneakers after he just beat them up, it's okay. So we have to educate our children, even as teenagers, even with respect.
Thank you.
You're
I just got to
welcome.
say, I agree with her 100%. I say this, you hear the nursery rhyme, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That is the
But it
biggest lie
do.
ever told.
It
And it
hurts.
is true. And I'll share this with you too. I've gone into prison where a gentleman, he said to me, he said, that woman's tongue was sharp. And I had said many a times, if a man had spoke to me like that woman of mine spoke to me, I would have killed him. Period. And it does matter how you speak to people, how you engage with people. I always say going back to the basics and treating people the way you want to be treated at all times, because what somebody says to you sticks with you forever. Sometimes you just can't get it out your head, no matter what. So it is very true when you talk about the verbal abuse, all of it is not good, but there are so many different forms of domestic violence. That's why we call it that, because one could verbally abuse and not physically abuse. One can mentally abuse and not financially abuse. One can sexual abuse and not physically abuse. My point being is it's all wrong. It's all a form of it. None of it should be tolerated or accepted. And just because one may have one of the other or mental illness, just because somebody may be mental or have depression or may have alcoholism or anything, it doesn't mean that everybody is abusive. They are all different things. They are all different issues that need to be addressed. So I'm glad you brought that up from a verbal standpoint. Thank you.
Yes, because so many people are suffering in silence due to verbal abuse.
Yes.
Because you can't erase what's been said. Once it's been said, it's been said. At least if you be in physical abuse, because like my sister, she was really physically, verbally, mentally, sexually. Like one day, when I tell you the story of the years and the things that she went through, it will blow your mind. See, I went through it twice. I had my sister in 2007. Then I had my niece killed in 2017 to domestic violence. So that's 2 in my family that we lost. So I turned my pain and made into a huge purpose to
Excellent.
educate children as well after we lost my niece, because I didn't want to have to bury another child or another adult to domestic violence.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
Thank you
welcome.
so much. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
So anyway, this has been a very rich conversation. I'm just trying to make sure we grab somebody put in here about grooming, the verbal abuses leads to grooming to get you to the physical or sexual abuse,
Absolutely.
whatever.
Yeah, that's what they do. Break you down.
And then we have also someone mentioned their cultural issues, and that's true. Like I said earlier, there have been mothers who have said, "Stay with him. He's gonna, go through hell. Now he's gonna be a great husband eventually." Like, okay. It's just hard for me to imagine that a mother would tell her daughter to stay, her child, because let's
Yes.
stop being sexist, her child to stay a parent would tell a child to stay in an abusive relationship. It's just hard to fathom, but I'm sure that it happens. Um, what is this? Yeah, so those are the kinds of things I'm scanning the chats. Am I missing anything, BB and Pam? Uh, And anything you want to add at this point, go ahead, Tanisha. I'm just scanning the chats to see what we got out here. Let me tell you that I put out here, guys, we're doing a trip to Ghana. So if anybody's interested, please take that information that I put in the chats and plan to join us on the 23rd. We're going to have another information session. If you've already been in a session, please let me know if you're planning to go or not. And also on Wednesday mornings, ladies, we have a 6 a.m. refresher, a mindfulness refresher. It's yoga, it's chair yoga, it's breathing exercises. It's a moment of you to release with Black women before you, in the middle of your week. So keep that in mind. I put it on the flyers all the time. So make sure you hop onto that because we got to, some of this is about self-care. Sometimes it's about being in the presence of other women. I don't know about you all, but very often I gain strength and power through being in circles with other women. And there's always, just like you said at your job, your supervisor never told you that she knew what was happening at your job, at your house, but clearly she did. How do you think she knew? You think she saw that you were covering up bruises or your behavior or what?
Oh, she knew. He would call constantly. It's knowing that I couldn't take calls, but as soon as I walked through the door, he would call me all times of the day during the whole session. It was just so many different things that he just would just not let up. And then when I left him, I let more information be known of the things that he was doing. And she kind of put two and two together. And then when he kept showing up at my job, even after I left him, and to the point that we put things in place where security was able to watch over my car and watch me leave the job every day to make sure that I was safe enough to leave. So there was a lot of different signs that.
What is that needs to be muted? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Tanisha. Somebody was.
No, that's fine.
Not. Is that Miss Nicole with that? Yeah, it is.
It might be the
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, that happens a lot. So people know. So even when you think people don't know what's happening to you, I mean, obviously, you've got this really nice, really nice husband that dresses up for Santa as Santa Claus and is the Boy Scout leader. Nobody thinks it's him. And sometimes it is him. But sometimes people are watching our behavior, and where we think we're covering it up, we really not. They know they might not know exactly what's going on, but they know something's going on. So reach out for help, and but keeping in mind, as someone pointed out early on, that there's a risk involved because you might be taking your life into your own hands, but aren't you doing that by saying nothing as well?
That's right. And my thing was either I was going to die staying or I was going to die leaving. But I was fed up and I knew that I wasn't going to stay another day with him. So you have to go when you're ready to go. And that's another thing. You can be as supportive as you want to be, but please don't tell other people what they should and should not do. You can never tell a person when they're ready to leave because only they know their situation the best. Just be there, be supportive, be loving, ask them what it is that they need in order to get out of that situation. That is the best support you can give anyone. And don't stop answering that phone or don't stop being there because at one time you say, I'm not going to deal with this anymore, could be the one time that person is really serious about leaving. And the flip side of that is, like I said, I don't discriminate either. I speak to a lot of women and a lot of men and I say, but be serious and realize that it's not just about you. You are putting other people, family members, friends, whomever, law enforcement, in jeopardy every time you continue to go back and forth and not take this thing as serious as you should, because that's one of the worst calls that they go to is, going to domestic violence calls, especially our police officers. So it goes both ways. Just know that the resources and the help is out here for you and think of a very safe way of exiting when it comes to leaving.
Exactly.
We had a question from
Yes.
Potts about your mental health and your family support.
Yes.
He asked if you ever felt suicidal or did suicidal, and did your brother attempt to rescue you?
Excellent question. Was I ever suicidal? I threatened to kill myself in front of him once as a young person with a pair of scissors, and that was because I wanted him to stop. I never had it in my mind to ever take my own life. And I went through some pretty horrific things. My faith in God and my strength in God is beyond measure, is beyond understanding for me. And I'm not here, to press religion on anyone. I could just only tell you what helped me. And it was the fact that I never asked why. I never questioned anything. I took ownership and responsibility for my part in all of this, not making excuses. But I felt like me taking my marriage very seriously, the only thing that I do realize that I did now is I loved him more than I loved myself. But I wouldn't do anything different looking back on it. I think I did everything I could and that I knew to do at that time. Now that I'm older and wiser, I know better. And that's when we say, you know better, you do better. And that's true. So I never, thought about taking my life. That was never a question for me, other than that one time, hoping that if I threatened to kill myself, that he would stop abusing me, but it never did. It never stopped him.
Did your brother ever attempt to rescue you?
Now, my brother, when you talk about my brother, my siblings were younger than me, and that was part of the isolation. It was just he and I and the children after high school. So my family members, I didn't tell them until after I left, but my siblings were much younger. I had older cousins and other family members, and even my stepdad, he told me, he said, he's going to kill you. Everybody knew that it was just that bad, that if I did not leave him, he was going to kill me. And his actions surely did exude that when I left him. But luckily for me, I'm here. I'm here. And I'm here for a reason. I'm here for a reason.
You had one other question from Patricia Jones, who
Okay.
asked, did he ever get help? Did he remarry? Did he have more children?
So as far as I know, he never got the help that he needed. Yes, he has married several times over. He is a habitual. He has gone in and out. I think this is the longest that he's been out here recently. Unfortunately, I don't speak much on him and his situation because I do not follow him. I only know what I know through very, very reliable sources. But I will say that I don't know if he's ever gotten the help that he has needed to be a better person. And as far as his relationship with our children, I don't get involved with that either. That's between him. They're all grown. It's up to them. But I've told them from the very beginning, he's your father. You don't have to like him. You don't have to love him, but you will respect him. And now that they're grown, they make their own decisions. And I leave it at that.
To your knowledge, did he ever express or show any remorse for his abusive behavior?
To me or to who? To me? No. Other than when we went to trial, and I think that he felt, in all honesty, I think because he had to take some type of ownership in order to get visitation with our children. So I can't really say if he was genuine or not, but he's never apologized to me. He has admitted that he has done all of those things to me. He did do that, but he has never said, I'm sorry to me. Never.
Okay, thank you.
Did you take the kids to visit him when he was incarcerated?
Actually, I allowed his parents to take them. Yes, once a month. And then they were going more than once a month behind my back. And when I found that out, I stopped it altogether because I did not want my children, especially my boys, thinking that prison was the place to be. So when they went against my wishes, I stopped. And then when he got out, he took me for visitation, in which I knew he was, and I didn't have a problem with that. It was supervised at first, and then he didn't even make it past the second set of supervision before he was back in prison again. So those were the results of him not getting the help that he needed.
Patricia Jones asked, she mentioned that your story is cathartic, but did you ever get one-on-one counseling? And are you in a loving relationship now?
Excellent question. So no, for me, when I heard that, he told me, when I get out, I'm going to kill you all. I had a 5-year-old, 3-year-old, and a 9-month-old, and I felt like I was on borrowed time. I didn't need anyone. I didn't need to lay on anybody's couch and have them tell me what was wrong with me. I felt I knew what was wrong with me, and he was in prison. I had to get going. And I was like, I'll deal with therapy or counseling or anything else later on down the road. But right now it's still survival mode for me. And I'd say to this day, I need more counseling now than ever. I'll admit that. And I am going to go. And I did get into another marriage. I did marry for a second time, and I'm just recently divorced, and it has nothing to do with domestic violence. But it is what it is. And I think now just me and my path and what I'm doing in life, is nothing wrong with sitting down and talking to someone and unpacking it all. But I tell you, my counseling, my therapy is doing what I'm doing right now. This is so therapeutic and healing for me, because every single time I do this, I find that I get better and better and better and better on the inside.
You're
Because
real
I'm
good
helping,
at with
Can I
this
say something?
I'm helping
TV
someone
show.
else. Yeah,
So
we got a lot to talk
talk to us
about.
about your television show. So what is the premise of your show going to be?
I will, and then we'll get back to that lady in the back that said, "Can I say something?" Yeah.
Oh, who is that? I didn't know. Go. We can go to her. Who is
Okay,
that,
then I'll
Beverly?
tell you about the show.
Oh,
Okay.
oh, can
Who
I
was the
say
lady with
something?
the question?
Hey, love,
Oh,
it's
you
her.
mean,
It's her.
yes, I'm sorry. I just have to say that, yes, I think you do need one-on-one counseling because you still are holding on to all of those things that happened to you. And I think it's like when you have a wound and it's festering and you have to clean it out and get back to the red, beefy, meaty part of the wound, and then it can heal. And I think if you can get some one-on-one counseling now, you will be able to heal and move on with your life, because you can even hear it now that you're still, immersed in all of those things that happened to you. And I think, just from my professional opinion, you need to do that.
Well, I thank you
What I
so
mean?
much for your professional opinion. And that's a beautiful
I'm a
thing.
retired physician, by the way, so that's why I'm telling you this.
No,
Okay.
and I appreciate it, but let me tell you this. I tell you
Okay.
what, me personally, me wanting to go and talk with somebody in counseling has absolutely nothing to do with what I've gone through. And the reason why you hear and you feel the passion and the unpacking is because I have a true passion for this. And I know I'm healed. I am. I'm healed beyond measure, because I have to take myself back to this place in order to do what I'm doing. God takes me out of myself in order to share this story, to say, this doesn't bother me. I can talk about it all day, all night. It doesn't affect, and your eyes are getting big, and that's fine. And it's good for you to feel the way you feel. I can only tell you how I feel. I can only tell you what I'm going through. And even if I sat down on someone's couch and had counseling, that's not going to stop me. That's not going to stop me from sharing. It's not going to stop me from unpacking. It's not going to stop me from doing what I'm doing. I love this. I love it. And I relive it as many times as I can to save another person's life. That's healed.
Yes,
That's
absolutely. And
healed
that's
to
why
me.
it's cathartic, because you are getting it out of, and getting it
Mm-hmm.
out of your system. But I still, you're saying that laying on a couch, I mean, just even talking to women like us, I mean, this is kind of therapeutic and
It
counseling.
is. It
But
is.
I think that if you still, you can get someone who you trust and feel like they can help you, I think it will also help in your healing. I
No, and I
really
love this.
do.
But I guess my question to you is, help me with what? What do you think I need help with? That's good to know. Tell me.
With complete healing, so that you can go on and maybe meet some other man one day that you
Oh,
feel good about, comfortable with, and you could have a loving relationship with. I think that that ghost of your past still comes into your life.
oh no, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay.
I
All
remarried.
right.
No,
Okay.
no. I beg to differ. And I got to tell you why. And I love this because I've been in several relationships after I even remarried. I've loved
Mhm.
like none other. I still believe in love. I love love. I want love, all of that. It has nothing to do with him. Nothing. He is the furthest thing from my mind. And so I'm glad I just want to clear that up for you. And that's why I asked that question. But no, they're good men out here. Trust me, there are a lot of good men. And if I felt that way, I don't think I would be able to do what I do if I felt still in that place. If I was still in that space and place with him, I would not be able to have future relationships or have the relationships that I've had. Because I say this all the time. How do you know the new person is not the right person if you're treating them like the old person? Think about what I said. So I don't go into any relationship not trusting, not thinking that that person has the best for me, not thinking that this is going to work. I don't bring the fact thinking that this person's going to hit me, beat me, do any of the things that my ex did to me. That's the furthest thing from my mind. I trust until a person gives me a reason not to trust.
Yeah.
And so I'm open to relationships and being with other people. And it has nothing to do with what I've gone through in the past.
Tanisha, may I just say something?
Yes, go ahead.
I know where you're coming from. When you said you forgave him, that's all you needed.
Yeah,
When
I did.
you are in a relationship, because I can relate to that. When I divorced, I forgave my husband.
Mm-hmm.
And prior to his death, we were on a good talking relationship simply because we have children and grandchildren. But I forgave him.
Mm-hmm.
And even at 84, I still had the guys looking at me. I had a preposition just here 2 weeks ago. Let me tell you, I'm still naive. And what does he keep
Go ahead, Miss McCants.
keep coming by for? And he said, I came too late to meet or to sit with you. I didn't ask him to sit with me. But I tell you what, your forgiveness is the key. So, doctor, I understand your concern, but
Yeah.
know when we need therapy.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate it. And I'm being honest. You're right. I may need therapy now, not because of him. I need therapy now because of what I feel I personally might want to unpack with myself.
Correct.
You know, it has nothing to do with relationships. I just got to make that perfectly clear. But I do appreciate, I really do appreciate what you said, because you're not saying nothing that I have not heard. My daughter tells me all the time, we all need therapy. I'm a proponent. I am a huge person that would say, a huge advocate for any type of therapy. Yes. Yeah.
Tanisha, I believe you'll never let anybody hit you again.
Ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. Nobody will ever, I will never allow anyone to do anything to me that will harm me ever again in life. And I'll tell you what I learned out of my second marriage is I will never put another human being before myself ever again in life. There is God and then there's Tanisha. And I've never been so much in love with God and Tanisha in my entire life. I love me some me right now, that nobody can do anything to me that is going to be harmful to me. So that's what I've learned out of all of these relationships that I've been in. Yeah.
Tanisha, on the point of counseling, I believe
Yeah.
your children witnessed some of the abuse on some level.
Mm-hmm.
Did they ever receive any counseling, or did you ever feel that they could benefit from it?
Yes, during school, during those years of school, they did. And my daughter will tell you, she's in counseling now. She's in therapy now. And like I just said, she feels we all do. And I feel we all do. I really do. I cannot make my other children go to therapy. I can't. You know, kids are going to be kids. Adults are going to be adults. They are grown now. I can only suggest, I can only ask and put it out there. I cannot make them do what they don't want to do. And I mean, I'm coming from a loving place because of what all we've gone through. You know, I believe we all do. We all need it. We all need it for whatever reason. And it may not even have anything to do with DVSA. It may just be something that we're going through in life. You know, depression, mental illness. There's so many other things that we're going through in life, period. You know, right now, that a lot of people are going through, and they say, hey, I need to talk to somebody. So it may not even have anything to do with domestic violence, but I think we all should
We need to get to a place in life where we value our mental health as much as we do our physical health.
Yes, ma'am.
And
You said it.
and see them as one in the same. Like they're united. If you're okay mentally, if you're working on yourself physically, you're probably nourishing yourself mentally and vice versa.
Yeah. as well as DV.
So anyway, let's
It's
talk a little bit about your television show that's going to be starting. How'd you get it? What are your topics going to be? How's it going to be laid out? Where can people catch it to watch it? Talk to us, and congratulations on getting a TV show.
Thank you so much. And actually, it is going to be shown on the HHN TV network. So please, it's an app that you must download.
HHN TV?
Yes, please. So it's the THEHHN TV. That is where you can go online to be able to subscribe. The show will actually be released in May. If you go, I'm on all social media platforms. You can go to TanishaMichelle.com. That's my website. That's Tanisha Michelle with 1L.com. You can get the book there. I have the book in Spanish also and in English. It's just so many different ways. But the show itself is something that I worked along with the gentleman who owns the network down in Atlanta. And I'm just excited to be a part of this because it's something I've always wanted to do. It was part of the, how can I give back? How can I share? How can I show that there are so many other Tanisha Bagleys like me that have a story? We all have a story. And I was told a long time ago, you can't just talk about this every day, all day. And I'm like, yes, you can. Yes, you can. It's long overdue. It's long overdue.
So is that going to be the premise of your programming?
It is.
Domestic violence?
Yes,
Okay.
it is. And it's not just domestic violence, though, but it's domestic violence. And someone asked in the chat, what is DVSA? Domestic violence and sexual assault. So DV encompasses sexual assault, rape, all different aspects of domestic violence, but I also tackle mental illness, depression, human trafficking, child abuse. So when I say all things violence, that is where my show comes into play. And so what I've done is I've interviewed different people that have experienced some form of domestic violence and sexual assault, rape, or any of those topics. And we're just letting them shed light and share their story and how they overcome and what has happened to them. So the first 10 episodes have already been shot and we're actually going to be releasing in May. So I'll be letting you guys know when the first show will be released. But yes, it is the Tanisha Michelle show. I'm so excited. I'm beyond happy that this thing has come to pass, and I'm just excited. Yeah.
You should be. You should
Yeah.
be. That's fascinating. And it's a testament, again, to how far you've come. So
Yes.
yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Yes, ma'am.
Beautiful thing. Let me see. I don't see any other questions. Anybody on the phone? I always forget the folks on the phone. Does anybody on the phone want to say anything? If you do, do *6 and we can hear you.
I would like to say something. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm Ginger. I'm a retired social worker from social services, and I worked in emergency services, and I was responsible for securing shelter for domestic violence people. And we had to watch a lot of videos on it. And the recurring theme in all the videos is that they will eventually kill you, and that the exit has to be planned out very carefully because that's when the violence occurs, when they catch you moving.
Yes.
When they find you exiting the household. So I would just like to compliment the speaker, Miss Tanisha, for
Yes, it's Tanisha. Yes, ma'am.
For being able to leave that situation, survive the situation, and do what you needed to do to make you and your family whole. But we also learned that it is what's the word just escaped me. It is why can't I think of the word? It is something that a syndrome. It's a syndrome, and sometimes it takes the domestic violence survivor multiple times to get away from that situation. So I'm so glad that you got away with your life. I'm just so glad because I've had situations where I relocated a woman to the state that you live in. And I had her cousin as a client, and I asked her, I said, how's your cousin doing? She moved the man down there with her, and she was pregnant, but he was beating her while she was pregnant.
Yes.
And so sometimes they get away, they go to another state, and they still would bring the abuser to them because that's all they know.
That's
They
right.
associate love with pain.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that your platform will probably help a lot of women and give them a voice that they don't think they have. So
Thank
thank
you.
you for sharing your story.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're
And that is
welcome.
so true. That is so true. That's why I said people say you can't talk about it all day. Yes, I can. And it goes back to the young lady, the woman that, shared about the counseling piece. That's what makes it so therapeutic for me, because if I can say one other Tanisha Bagley, if it's something I said or something that I share, I'm like, I don't care. I don't want you to do everything I've done, but I'm going to give you the resources. I'm going to get you the help. I'm going to give you everything that you need to help you, because you're right. Sometimes, as he said, it's 1 out of 7. I think it's between 1 out of 7 and 1 out of 9 times that it takes a person to actually leave a domestic violence situation. For me, it was the first time. When I got it in my mind I wasn't coming back, I wasn't coming back. And I said, well, if I got to die this way, God, I'm going to die this way. But it don't always turn out that way for people. And we know this. And so that's why I knew once I survived this, and being able to speak and to share and talk as much as I do, because that's one of the things, ladies, he took my voice away. I used to stutter. I couldn't speak. He beat me so bad I stuttered. It was embarrassing for me to speak. But God, not only has he restored my speech, I can't stop running my mouth. People tell me I talk too much. But if it comes to DVSA, I'm going to talk as much as I can to save another person's life. I'm going to keep on talking. And this is, I know my purpose. I know why I'm here. And I just want to be that voice for so many others who have lost their lives behind this. So I thank you. I thank you. And I ask you all to continue to share, continue to share, continue to stand up. It doesn't matter who it is, whether male or female, child, cat, dog, all of it is wrong, and we need to stop it. And I'll say one more thing before I go. We hear a lot, especially I say this with DV, and then when it comes to, for instance, cancer, breast cancer, both months are celebrated in October. There is millions and billions of dollars that has been raised for cancer, breast cancer, women, whatever, any type of cancer. But it costs you nothing to keep your hands to yourself. It costs you nothing to stand up and say it's not right to abuse, to hurt, to rape, to violate, to abuse a child. I mean, come on, let's think about what we can do. It's something that everybody, all of us can do. And that's just standing up for another person that we know that's going through anything, any type of violence, and say, it's not okay. And I'm going to get you some help if help is what you needed, but we can stop this thing. So I'll stop right there.
It's been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. And there is no question in my mind that your, I'll say testimony, but your sharing has definitely empowered or enlightened somebody on this call to know something that they didn't know before, to feel more comfortable about having the conversation. We need to stop avoiding it. Like you said, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to get any better. It's a part of our community. It's a part of all communities. But it doesn't make it okay. So thank you.
And can I just say this? You know how you can start asking, especially if you think, are you safe? Are you safe? Just ask somebody, are you safe?
Yeah.
Are you healthy?
Right.
Is this, what can I do for you? I think that's another thing. Is there anything I can do for you? What can I do for you? Because it may be something as simple as a bus ticket. It may be something as simple as can you help me call a loved one? It may be something as, helping me find shelter, or just let's start with that type of conversation. Instead of telling people what we feel they need, ask them what they need to help them be better. Okay?
That is so true.
Yeah.
So can you all unmute and give Tanisha some love?
Thank you. Y'all been showing me love throughout this whole conversation. I see
Thank
the
you,
heart
Tanisha.
Thank you, ladies. No,
It
thank
was
you for real.
definitely a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Definitely a pleasure. Helen, I definitely would love to share my story on your platform, because it's a lot. It's a lot.
Absolutely.
I would love to share it with
Anybody,
you too, Tanisha. It's
You
a
too.
lot.
You too. And anything I can help with,
Anybody
y'all,
who's on
please,
here, if
please
you
let me
have
know.
a story, if you have a story that you think would be of interest to the ladies, by all means, reach out. Or if you just have something you want to share, whether it's, look, we talk about all kinds of things. The reason I was reluctant about doing domestic violence today is because we just did incest last week, and I'm like, oh my God, that's two heavy topics back to back. But
It's all right. It's
like
needed.
Tanisha
It's really
indicated,
needed. And we
in
really
light of
need to
all,
get our men involved because, like I said, I do support groups, I do walks, I do a lot of stuff for the city for domestic violence awareness. And you will be surprised, a lot of men have told me that hitting a woman, they saw their dads doing it, they saw their grandfathers doing it, so they felt like it wasn't domestic violence.
Right.
That they just found out, oh, I just found out a couple of years ago that that's domestic violence. My pops and my grandfather been hitting the women in our family for years. It's been going on. So
yeah.
we really got to get our
Get it.
men in tune.
So we're going to wrap it up right here, right now. Thank you all so much. Did we lose Tanisha? She's gone.
No, she
She's
was just right
gone.
there.
Okay, she probably dropped. But anyway, I just want to say thank you all again for coming. And when Black women gather, amazing things
Amazing
happen.
things
Yes, it
happen.
was.
And this has
It
definitely
was.
been another amazing Sunday with everybody. Thank you so much for your time and your attention to our guests. I'm sure she appreciated it, and we can definitely have her back again with men to talk further about this
Yes,
conversation.
definitely.
All right. So
And
on that
Helen,
note,
just once again, that play that I saw yesterday, it deals
yes.
with domestic abuse by the wife perpetrated on the husband.
Oh
So
wow.
it
The
does
other the
deal
other
with,
story we don't talk about.
right,
Yeah,
and
great.
it deals with abuse and the pattern. So
Yeah,
I will
good
send you the
stuff.
information.
Yeah, thank you. I think somebody dropped it in the chat for us. I don't know if it's the same one or not, but yeah.
It's the same
But
one,
yeah,
but
that's
they're going to
good.
go on tour. So they'll be in Baltimore, Atlanta, Charlotte. They're
Right.
going on tour.
Okay. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, my telephone folks, for chiming in. I'm gonna stop recording. We can talk for a few more minutes, but this has been a good session. Thank you so much.
And thank you for doing this. I need to jump off, but thank you so much. I enjoyed
Okay.
these.
Thank you, darling.